Michelle, Adam, welcome to a deeper conversation. Welcome, guys. Here we go.
Well, what's special about our work and this continuing conversation that we're having is that we're building on them, and there seems to be no end in sight to the information that we're bringing forward together, but we're doing everything separately. And there's just so many interconnections. And we find as we go through this conversation is that what we're talking about today is going to build on our first two. So we've had one where we talked about compelling evidence for the harvesting of the Earth's original energy grid and us. And then our last one together was the destruction, exploitation, and reverse engineering of the Earth's grid system. And it's like we had all the elements, but I know for myself, and I think I'm hearing and seeing this from both of you, the picture is coming into focus. And we can give even more substantial evidence as to this harvesting of both human energy and Earth's resources, as well as how this whole system is being destroyed to this day, exploited, and reverse engineered. Having said that, I'm totally optimistic for the future, and just bringing this information out to talk about raises collective awareness. And I firmly believe they're not going to get away with what they've done. We're seeing it play out now, but we're also seeing new things coming in, including this information. And we're all guided differently, but we're having results that overlap. And so it's always a pleasure to talk to both of you. So thank you, Chad. Thank you, Adam.
Sure.
Adam, welcome. Michelle, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you both here. And you're right, this is now just adding more pieces to that puzzle. You know, we feel like the picture was full before, but now as the pieces get added and we all bring different parts to that puzzle, it just becomes a more complete picture. Um, so Adam, what have you got to say, my friend?
Yeah, I'll just agree with what both of you saying now. We're approaching that time where the truth is much stronger than all the lies and manipulation that they're put out there. So it's people like us who are collecting some information together and sharing it with the world. Because, what information we share is going to help other people in the research that they're doing and in their life as well. And all that does is raise their consciousness, which is what we need to do. So what we're all doing is a great help to humanity as a whole, basically, getting the truth out there, which is what the truth desperately wants to get out there now. And it requires people like us in order to try and get some of that truth out there for people so they can do their own research and, look at things from a different, more of an open angle than the false manipulation from society.
Yeah.
So something that I feel very strongly about is providing information to show you so you can at least see where we're coming from and determine on your own whether you think it's valid or not.
Mhm.
The picture's becoming clearer and the evidence more solid about a cataclysmic event. And I wanted to go through a PowerPoint today with all of you on some things that I've found, talk about nodal points, and then kind of expand that information and just really get the questioning process started, because the Earth, everything that I'm seeing is that the Earth was dramatically different. My personal belief is it wasn't that long ago when this cataclysm happened. But there's a lot of different opinions in this community, especially about what happened. And I'm compiling more evidence that I hope to have out in the next couple of months, both on the energy grid, how it was set up, what happened to it, and then evidence for the cataclysm. But I wanted to go through some findings that at least will kind of get the ball rolling and talk about some things that, are we looking at something that took place over long periods of time, like desertification, or did that happen recently? We're told it didn't. We're told it happened a long time ago. But there's some interesting convergences that we can talk about this, and we can also talk about potential giant tree sites. And I have Chad to thank deeply for bringing awareness of giant trees into my lens. That has brought in even more information, more breakthroughs, and other people I've worked with are doing the same thing. With Adam, with Stephanie, with Aaron, who brought Appalachia and things in West Virginia to my attention. There's so many things that are helping to achieve even deeper levels of understanding. And I personally am not saying that without reason. It's deep. And we were just talking about that before we started.
Deep is deep, and welcome to a deeper conversation. That's the beauty of what we do here. It's a deeper conversation, and ultimately, that's what it is. But we provide evidence. But all we're doing is having an honest, open conversation where other places it might be, scorned upon. So and Michelle, we always do this. It seems to be me and Adam. I feel like are always in constant gratitude towards you. But what you're doing, you've and Adam and other people online, the people you've just mentioned, it's opening a door for other people to step forward. So, when you made videos, it led to me making videos. Now Aaron's making videos, Adam's making videos. Everyone's adding to a piece of the puzzle, and the more that contribute, the more we're going to find. So it's just a beautiful time, and I appreciate you all, everyone.
Exciting to be here right now.
Yeah.
And once I started receiving certain information about 6 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, but it was about 6 years ago that I started blogging and making videos. I felt like I've got to get this out. Like, am I the only one that's seeing this? We're starting to see things in the environment, earthworks, old buildings, started to come out once I noticed it, megalithic stones. And it's like I was the only person that I knew of that was seeing it. It's like, okay, I've got to find a way to share this so other people can see what I'm seeing. And that led to what I'm doing today. But I feel like, the universe wants this to come out, like you were saying, Adam. It just wants this to come out. And if you're an open and receptive vessel and have the inclination to make videos, we have the tools now. We haven't always had that. If you just want to go around your community and start asking questions, it's that simple. It's a perceptual shift because the controllers have told very flimsy stories at things being built in impossible times before we were supposed to have the technology for it, or in the middle of wartime. There's a lot of those stories. We built this building during World War II or World War I or Civil War or, whatever. That's what I find in what I'm looking at. You guys looking at it, your part of the world, we're finding similar stories on both sides of the ocean. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen and the PowerPoint that I put together. So I wanted to start out with the 12 nodal points on the Earth's grid system. These are the primary nodal points. And I've been doing some research through this part of the world starting from Amsterdam Island. It's a remake of a series I did when I first started, sometime around 2019, maybe 2020. And when Chad and I had our last conversation, I was noticing the islands at the beginning, Amsterdam Island and Mauritius and several others, were likely giant tree stumps, which wasn't on my radar when I was first doing it. So I started doing the series over again, and I'm not even halfway through it, but it's taking me through this part of the world, through the Indian Ocean, through East Africa, through Yemen, United Arab Emirates, and Abu Dhabi, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth. And there's something very special in this part of the world, and I want to talk about that too, and what's going on with historically what we're talking about and present day what we're talking about, because it absolutely relates. And this whole region of Africa and Arabia, particularly going into Iraq, Iran, has been particularly coveted by the controllers and targeted for lots of stuff, whether it's the oil, whether it's the people, whether it's the places, holy places. There's something incredibly important to our history in this region. And Axum is one of the primary nodal points. Other things that are in Axum are the church that has the Ark of the Covenant, supposedly. And there's a greater importance to Ethiopia that it's just gone. And so there's some big part of our story in this region. But I wanted to talk about this because this area has evidence of destruction. And this is this Northern Stele Park. The Great Stele is the one that you see down here at the bottom that's toppled over and in like 3 or 4 pieces. The one beside it is toppled. There might be a couple of others. And then what they're sitting on top of here goes underground. This is a very holy place. And one of the things that I wanted to do and go through the 12 nodal points is just to show you the evidence of some kind of catastrophe or cataclysm and where it shows up. And my belief is that there was a directed energy going through the grid system, at least 1, maybe 2 attacks, possibly simultaneously, possibly with a little bit of time in between, because this devastation is worldwide. And so that's kind of where I'm leaning on the cataclysm. I do believe it was deliberately caused, and it was designed to take out this civilization and the grid system. It brought us the world we live in today. And personally, I don't believe that if there was a random event, we would even be here. I don't think anybody would have survived. I think the 1%, names we all recognize, Rothschild, Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, Astor, DuPont, all of those related families were ready to come in and start building this new world from the old world. And I don't believe that was, hey, we're just going to take advantage of this event. I think they were like, okay, it's done. The deed is done. We're going to go in and we're going to re-engineer the world to our advantage. And so, again, we're just kind of go along with that in this presentation. That's my working hypothesis. This event went throughout the grid system and it would have affected the nodal points. So Axum, Ethiopia, the first one I'm talking about. the explanation is, well, we don't know exactly when it fell down, but something happened and this gigantic stele just fell. It's called the Great Stele or Stela. Are you all familiar with Borobudur in Java? If you look at it from the top, it looks like a giant mandala.
Mm.
And there are symbolic meanings from you go from the bottom of it to the top, but there are Buddhas all over this for the whole journey, and they're in different places. And what's interesting about this is not seeing so much the mud flood, but 9 bombs were detonated here in January of 1985 in a terrorist attack. Why? And wars and terrorism both seem to be a fallback on, okay, this didn't get it, but let's take care of it this way. These would be places of power as well. And the nodal points are where numerous ley lines go through. And I was doing some research on seeing our modern history with new eyes and came across this little bit of information. Any thoughts before I go on?
I would like you both your opinions on the relation to the human body in terms of awakenings and Kundalini energy, almost the micro macro. Because the way I see this, it's like with Kundalini awakening and particular energy in the human body, just to make it work on all levels, it can be transmuted and the chakras can be empowered in a positive way, or it can be done in almost a false way where it gets blocked and they almost explode, causing damage to the organism and the body. Not only that, when we look at, as you guys go on about circuit boards and the power processes within that circuit board would all be connected, but ultimately if one damaged I just in relation to the human body and the energy, do you see that? Do you feel what I'm saying in relation to Kundalini energy and how it could be manipulated and go in and take out all of them in one, the same as all of them empowered is positive?
Yeah, so no, I absolutely agree with you, Chad, saying about comparing it to the human body, the Earth energy grid, because the world is a living organism, if you like. Because if it wasn't living, it wouldn't be able to sustain humanity or anything living on it. It would just be a dead planet. So it has to be some kind of living organism. And like you say, with all the different chakras around the world, the equivalent of the chakras of the human body. So, you know, you have destructions going on in the world. So that could be the equivalent of having a short circuit on the electrical circuit, for example. And also the diseases, for example, that the human body can sometimes suffer, or any mental illnesses or something like that caused because of a disruption to the energy system flowing through the body. So it's exactly the same with the Earth grid. In that same sense that, you know, if something happens at one energy point, chances are something is going to go along to the other energy points, the other nodal points, and have some impact in one way or another. Mm-hmm. And the more you control it, if they do it artificially, like the controllers do, they can just, you know, have something up in one area and it will affect the rest of the grid, in effect creating like a short circuit, like a destruction, if you like, across the world.
And that's a really good description of the reverse engineering that we've been talking about that's been going on since whatever happened. So the grid was life enhancing, benefited all life everywhere, free energy generating, everything was great. Something happened, and then this process of reverse engineering the grid started. And my understanding, since even before I started doing this research and blogging and making videos, is that the Earth grid represents our group soul. And so knowledge of the grid was removed deliberately from our awareness, so we wouldn't know about it, we wouldn't know how important it was. And then they proceeded to manipulate the grid by creating these types of events on the grid. So whether it's this terrorist attack or whether it's a false flag attack last month, they pick certain locations on the grid. And in spite of everything that's been thrown at us, we're still waking up. But, you know, in terms of how did we get here, this is going along with the reasons why.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of what we've been up against.
And like, just for anyone watching, the reason I go on about it so much, from a perspective of micro macro, it's easy to see the answer or answers. It's like, it might be hard for us to look at the world and see particular things, but once we know it's similar to the human body and we look down, when there's a problem with a heart, a particular blood, a particular diseases, we know how to solve those, you know what I mean? So all it has to ultimately do is be expanded upwards, and it can be repeated. So when we understand ourselves, know thyself, and the body and the ourself, we can understand the bigger picture. Sorry, Michelle, carry.
Yeah, great. Anytime, guys. So this is Delphi, and it's one of the places, it's like a belly button of the world. Another one is the Coracancha. Another one is Göbekli Tepe. We'll talk about Göbekli Tepe in just a little bit. And we're also going to talk about rivers and railroads in this presentation. But this morning I was just looking it up, and Delphi is situated right next to a river. I believe it's the Pleistos River. And we're going to talk about the relationship between these ancient sites and modern, so-called modern infrastructure, to show the continuity of this grid from ancient times. And I have Aaron to thank from Uncovering Hidden West Virginia for sending me information and things that he became aware of that once I saw it, it's like, ooh. And that was really the first time I made the connection between these ancient sites and rivers, S-shaped river bends that have railroads right next to them. So there definitely seems to be a connection between ancient sites on up through time. And there's an amphitheater here. I didn't show a picture of it, but I'm aware of acoustical properties of these amphitheaters and, you know, potential other reasons to have them in existence besides just sitting around watching a play, you know, which seems to be what we've received in our education. That's what they were used for. But my suspicion is they had at least more than one use, even if they were used as places for dramatic performances. So any thoughts?
Absolutely. With the amphitheatres, it's the same because where we are, we're at Warwick Castle. They usually have the summer concerts, and you can hear it from literally anywhere from the castle where the amphitheatre is. You can hear it literally from about on a 3 mile radius. You can actually hear it, all the music coming from. So you know why is that amplified so much? Because of the acoustic properties of the amphitheatre and also the mineral content of what's there in the land to amplify acting the equivalent of the speaker system, like the magnet in the speaker, and also the vibrating cardboard that you get. It has a similar impact to that, in my opinion. So, yeah, you're right, Michelle.
100%. I'm 100%. You can see it in the diagram, in the way it's built. Again, relating it to computer, relating to how organs work within the body and key systems, but that would be more terms of vibration and frequency. It's a little bit different with electronics, but it's the same principles: upwards, downwards, across, mechanically, naturally, imitated.
And I have all kinds of choices of pictures, but I think, Chad, if you can see if you can find some footage of this area around Delphi, because looks pretty beat up too. You know, Delphi has the same markers of something happening here and toppling over things, and it used to be an oracle here, the Oracle at Delphi. Places where there's a contact between this world and other dimensions that's been kept from us. I mean, I'm not sure about this location, but I'm aware of other places that were just backfilled, you know, where there were these places that oracles would go. I'm thinking there was a place in Stromboli where there's a volcano, you know, where there were these rifts where there were vapors and things coming up, and for people that are tuned into that, they were held in high esteem to receive these communications, and just, you know, backfill them. Don't want to have that there. So the physical destruction of this grid has been ongoing, and there's many examples of that, but, you know, including places like this. So Göbekli Tepe is another interesting one, and you can see the alignment with the Milky Way there on the right. All of the infrastructure on the Earth was in alignment with the heavens, whether it was solstices or equinoxes or, you know, Milky Way or full moon or whatever. There were correspondences all over the Earth. And the most familiar one are these ancient sites, but you also see that with so-called modern buildings and Capitol buildings and skyscrapers like the Chrysler Building in New York City. You know, with all the pictures that are available online, if you start looking for them, you can find them. And they're just, there's something going on there. And more than just this random explanation that we're given. So what's interesting about Göbekli Tepe, which I believe means belly button hill or navel hill or something like that in Turkey, today's Turkey, is that when I first read about it many years ago, it was probably Smithsonian Magazine or something like that. I specifically remember the article saying that it had been intentionally backfilled. For some reason, 10,000 years ago, when this place was believed to have come into existence, or however many, long time ago, when they were done with it, they just covered it in dirt. At the time, it's like, okay, whatever. But all the information that's coming to light is like, why was it filled with dirt? Was it an event that took place? And we'll go into some more examples that are even more clear-cut about that, but this is one of them.
It's just the same. These nodes, the navel spots, you know, isn't it? As we know, that's where the cord is with the baby as well, and where things like creation really comes from. And it's funny how it kind of gets blocked up after birth as well. That's what I was going to say. I find that odd, like the similarity with that.
No, I was just going to say, and that's a really good point, Chad. And
We froze.
Are you there, Michelle? I think you're frozen. I think she's froze.
That's what I thought happened the first time, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll carry on talking until Michelle gets.
You give your point, bro.
Yeah, so what I can obviously with the Michelle mentioned, obviously the Göbekli Tepe means belly button hill. That's quite similar to the video I'd done regarding Newbold Common here in Warwickshire. Yeah, so it's similar to what we've mentioned here in a previous video, and it's quite interesting because obviously she mentioned obviously Delphi as well. Delphi were basically now it's a UK company, I believe now, which is part of Lockheed Martin, and they used to have a base, Lockheed Martin, which is associated with Delphi now, the auto parts manufacturer. And they had a plant right next to the Belly Button Hill, the mound in Leamington Spa. You know, so everything links together.
that's interesting.
It all links together, and it's quite surprisingly because I actually used to work at the offices of the old Lockheed in Leamington Spa where the ley line actually comes through. So why would they have the novice at Lockheed position on where there is a ley line? You know, that office was there for them for a particular reason. And why do they have a site they were hiring from the local farmer in Leamington Spa where a ley line passes through again? You know, they all work with the energies of the ley lines for a specific reason, whatever that may be at the particular time.
Sorry about that, guys. I was going for
No
do not
worries.
disturb and I hit my hotspot. It's like, oops.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's speaking to the larger picture of what's going on. What are the controllers trying to control?
Mhm.
And Chad with the squatter man and the soccer field with that brilliant work you did on Sports Circuit. You know, that's a universal symbol of, I'm going to say, the big guy creation. And they're just want all of that energy for themselves, and they're zeroing in on these terms like belly button, or, you know, in language, spelling in English, to, I think, try to capture these bits and pieces of how we really work, how this place really works. You know, again, the new true nature of reality. And there are certain places on Earth that are extremely significant. Like what we said at the beginning, this goes deep. And I can bring more cards to the table with some of the things I found recently that just adds to that whole, you know, what they've been doing to manipulate the lines. And like you said, they're just not random. So another place that is a primary nodal point on the Earth's grid system is in the Gobi Desert. I do not have a location, an actual physical location to show you, but, you know, I can kind of give you an idea from this picture of what it looks like there. And, you know, again, this is another place that just looks blasted, and we'll see quite a bit of those. And we're also going to go into the giant tree locations as part of this. So that picture there could represent something along the lines of giant trees, the remnants of giant trees. And, you know, this is typically part of Mongolia and China, and Lop Nor is on the left-hand side of the map at the bottom, and that was where the Chinese did their nuclear testing for many years. And they seem to pick certain locations to do that. There's a place in Algeria, in North Africa. There's a place in Australia, the Marshall Islands. They're just, you know, blasting the heck out of these places with nuclear energy. And so that's not the whole story, but, you know, it's almost like when you're trying to kill a bug and it's not killing, and so you're saying bam, 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 trying to get the bug. You know, it's like, okay, we've wiped it out, but we still have to hurt these places. And I'm just going to throw something out here, and, you know, we can talk about it some more now or as we go through this. But I was talking to a friend yesterday who was wondering if what we see as today, they're called mounts or buttes or whatever, that I'm personally starting to see differently as tree stumps. If maybe their trees are still there, but in a different vibration, and we just can't see that. And when he said that resonated with me, because that's kind of makes sense. Because something happened, we don't know what. Did they blow off? Or, you know, some of them were clearly terraformed long ago and became part of the energy grid system. But for the ones that just look like tree stumps today, is the rest of the tree still there, and we just can't see it because it's in a different vibration.
Like a phantom arm, like that type of scenario. Yeah, definitely. I feel so, Michelle. I think that's a really cool conversation to have. That's deeper all on its own, isn't it?
Yeah. Just kicking around, the trees are very real and very important. What happened? And trying to figure that out.
Let me just show you two something. I have to pull it up on the screen, but there's a scene. I could show him probably good in Nutty Professor, but you guys know what it looks like when in acupuncture when you've got all the needles over you.
Yeah.
So like I kind of imagine. This is how I see like why trees are so prevalent in these locations. It's because if we imagine it as the human body again, with the acupuncture needles in. There's so many points and so many energy points, and just targeting one of those points can cause damage. Each one's powerful on its own. Particular spots, you've got a large array of points. In other spots, there's not so many. Generally, they follow lines or a pattern of sorts. So it makes sense for trees, is what I'm trying to say. When you've got to think, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And everything's on the table. I mean, we're just putting our heads together to try to figure this stuff out. So another nodal point is Lumbini, Nepal, is in Lumbini, Nepal, and that's considered the birthplace of Buddha. And I'm not personally aware of damage here, but just going to lay it all out there and go through each one of these. But what you do see here is the geometric shape there in the middle on the left with the water and the circular shape and the avenues leading up to it, the beautiful buildings, the stupa, and the particular shape at the top. And my interpretation of that would be its significance is connected to the pineal gland and how the original humans knew how to connect directly with source through their pineal gland, which would have been opened. And a lot more of our DNA was functioning then. I've long heard that a lot of our DNA was shut down and deliberately calcified with fluoride and things like that. And so everything was spiritual, everything was sacred, everything was lined up with each other and geometric. And, again, to my mind, there's just no way this is all random. And that's what they want us to believe. Different civilizations, different times, different cultures, waves of invasion and conquer and, all this other stuff. And, that seems to be more an artifact of our modern history. And before, humanity was in harmony with each other.
But this is it. When a cancer attacks the body starts to fight itself, doesn't it? It starts to try to defend, and it tries to spread, and it's not in harmony. And they are like a cancer.
And you can see from these old sites, a bit like that building there in Lubini. Basically, it's that used to be a place that people used to go for healing, because I'm sure that place would have balanced the human chakras and rebalanced some of the human A, and healing from any diseases such as cancers and stuff like that. People would have gone to those locations to receive that healing because of the energetics of the location. And I'm sure without a shadow of a doubt, some of these locations would have had electricity as a byproduct because of what's there, free electricity, that wouldn't have been as detrimental to what electricity as we know today. Because if they had their own supply of energy, basically, at this point, for electricity, whatever they needed for, it would have been a safe place for people to go. But now if you've got like a large power station with a high voltage, that's a dangerous place for human biology. So, that was beneficial in all ways, but now it's all detrimental to human health, whatever they try to do.
The more the reverse engineering that we're seeing. What came to mind, Chad, when you said that about cancer is that another thing I learned a long time ago before I started doing my own research is the idea that each individual human is a consciousness cell in a bigger body.
Yeah.
What if we were inside the body of God? If God is all and everything, it makes sense to analogize being within him. It seems God can know us, but we cannot fully know God. We seem to be but microbes within a greater body, within the body of the Creator. I have compared life to games, movies, TV, dreams. What about if we were inside the body of the Creator, us being but cells in the body of the Lord? Cells, the word, is very similar to selves. All the selves or cells in the body create the whole body. Each individual cell or self is part of the whole. We can lose many cells at one time and still function, but if too many cells are damaged, it would destroy the whole body. In the same note, one cell or self can create change in the whole system. Similar to how birds spread viruses, one can carry and pass it on to all.
And a good corollary to that are the cells in our own body. So we take for granted that unless we have a condition of dis-ease, everything's fine, everything's working together, everything's functioning, which would not be the case if our cells were constantly fighting each other. So it's kind of the same thing. We're all kind of a cell in this bigger body having our own experience. But when we're fighting each other, it's creating discord and suffering and death and disease and all the other things that come along with that. So that's an artificial state for us. We're not normally doing that. We're normally
exactly
in our normal state. We would be functioning like the cells in our body for health.
Mm-hmm.
Cells.
Yeah.
Cells are cells. The cells of the world are the cells of the bell. Brilliant, Michelle.
That's just a way of looking at it. And like so many of the things, we've just been told a completely different story about everything. And so the knowledge isn't lost, but and there's a lot of people that are aware of it. It's just not mainstream and kind of made to sound conspiracy theory-ish.
Yeah.
Oh, that person's crazy. They're talking about something because they don't want us to look at these things, these topics, who we are, the true nature of the world and our spirituality, those kinds of things.
We're all atoms, really. Atoms.
Well,
Yeah.
it's all about consciousness at the end of the day, because if you've got someone who's suffering, say someone who's got cancer, for example, if someone is of a higher consciousness level, they've got more chances of healing themselves from that cancer because they're on that high vibrational frequency, and that's going to change the frequency of the cells to help them, to potentially recover by themselves if they're on that high level of consciousness. And if someone's on the lower level of consciousness and they're always feeding the energy of fear and destruction and keep hearing that, that's a terrible thing that's happening to them, unfortunately, those people, because they're living on a lower vibration, have got less chances of any potential healing because that consciousness is controlling their overall vibration and frequency of the body and their cells. So it's just important for people to raise their consciousness level and knowing that, they can heal, I'm not saying in every single case, but in a lot of the cases, people can heal themselves with the right level of consciousness.
And that certainly speaks directly to the power of belief.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Stay away from bad cells. This is what it's about. The negative cells to influence. And as Adam's saying, good ones influencing good ways. Protect yourself, cell.
And we can see that in people that we know or possibly ourselves. How we look at life, how we look at challenges, how we look at health. Do we think that, if somebody in your family has Alzheimer's, you're automatically going to get it, or, if you get sick, you need to go take pills or whatever.
Yeah.
It really does. It does have an impact. So this is in Brazil. And I'm not sure if I can pronounce it right. Minas Gerais, Brazil, and I apologize if I messed that up. But there's some interesting things going on here. And again, the idea of the tree stump
Definitely.
here at this location, and then the mining going on here.
I think it's more tellable in that one. Like that's like, yeah, that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of mining going on here. I mean, this place is like a hotspot for amethysts and all kinds of things. And I think the reason I put this map here is to show the S-shaped river bends going through here.
Again,
it's been a while since I put this together, but I think that's why I picked that. Again, this is one location. I'm not sure the actual nodal point, but it's somewhere in there. And, speaking to the mining that goes on in conjunction with these sites as being connected to the trees. Any more thoughts on that, Chad?
Yeah, 100%. Same old stories we see everywhere. The trees, they're harvested for the reasons we know, not only for their resources, but also for the energy purposes, and their position and what they do to the world grid and everybody in the environment on a whole. So it's constantly two-tone, and the trees, as we say, because the energy flows upwards. Obviously, this is unseen energy. This is why, as you were saying with the trees, if you can imagine again the energy flowing upwards like a torus field, like an energy flowing, the best physical example of that is a tree. And a tree is a giant tree stump of sorts is the reason we find that a lot in these locations, is because that is, for me, one of its most natural formations, if not the natural formation, because of the energy that runs through. And then obviously to take that down, energy, resources, profit, manipulation, control, just everything from there, isn't it?
Very much so. Adam, I know you've done some research on trees.
I've got some research on nodal points about, particularly with giant trees, because obviously Chad mentioned in one of his videos on one of the locations not far from me, the Burton Dassett Hills tree location. And actually went down there the other week to, record some footage and stuff and do some research on it. And it clearly shows like the area of the actual country park as a tree stump. Mm-hmm. And then where you've got the mining that was there for the ironstone and the iron ore, it seems to have been concentrated at the center point of what would be the tree stump where all the mining was. So why would it be concentrated on top of if it's just a random hill or mountain, whatever they want to call it, why would, be concentrated at the middle to try and harvest that energy from the center, that iron ore? Because iron is obviously a conductor of energy. And by depleting that mineral, it's going to naturally deplete the energy that's still present in that location where the giant tree used to be. Yeah. So, it's literally all around the world.
It is. And, you all will keep hearing us talk about this because it's like it's something that's just coming back into focus. And the more we research and the more we can find these correlations and the importance of these trees that are connected to us, that are connected to source, that were performing a critical function on the Earth's grid system. Chad, you talked about mother trees, and I'm wondering if these nodal points were mother trees as well.
Yeah, I think there's a few different names for again what we call them, isn't there? But yeah, these trees were significant energy points that were huge and gigantic in proportion. Because although these giant trees were everywhere, there are obviously bigger trees than other trees, you know, and more significant trees than other trees, like with anything in life. So those, yeah, I term mother tree, which would be the type of tree you see in Pandora, like that big tree, the life, everything coming from it and to it. You know, there's a place near me called the hunting tree, and I've told you the visual, it's just all animals around it and all life, and you come to it to hunt because that's where everything is, and it's so these were mothers in that sense. That's why I think I call them that, because they're givers of life, and mothers are givers of life. They shelter, they care, and that's what trees do, especially these ones on the scale that they did. So, and not only that, give life to the whole thing, you know, and so mothers.
And the old human civilizations, they used to have settlements next to where these mother trees were.
Yeah.
It's a bit like this location, Burton Dasset Hills. I just recently discovered that there was that we found a medieval market town that was right next to it. You know, discovered on it, and it was one of the largest findings of a buried medieval settlement in the West Midlands and possibly in the UK. You know, they were built along these for a purpose, living by it. And what do then? Destroy those, depopulate those villages, those settlements for a reason.
And we'll see more examples of that kind of thing as we go along, where places where the town is either built on top of it, or places people go in much the same way that we were talking about in Avatar, Chad. So that was happening here too. This is Mount Hakusan in Japan, looking more like a giant tree site than some of the other ones.
Wow.
So here's a good example of, you know, I was talking about in Göbekli Tepe with the, you know, they said they buried it intentionally. And when I was growing up, we would see the giant heads of Easter Island in books and so forth, and then come to find out the heads had bodies and they were quite tall. And so in the example of Easter Island, which is also known as Rapa Nui, you can see something going on there. You know, something engulfed these gigantic statues. And the other thing I want to point out is that there's a way that the hands are being placed here down around his pelvis in the statue that you find in other places in the world. So you find it something like that at Göbekli Tepe. I found it on some islands like in Indonesia. Off the top of my head, I can't think of which one it is, but it's not coming. But anyway, that is a kind of a universal position of hands across the pelvis, like is seen in the statue down at the bottom where the guy is standing right in front of. So again, there's symbols and things that are found all over the earth that doesn't match the narrative, and they try to explain things away, but it doesn't work nearly as well as a universal civilization. So this is a picture of Sedona in Arizona, and I lived right in this area for about 3 years, 2 or 3 years. And I had a nice view of Thunder Mountain outside of my window in my bedroom.
For New Age spiritual seekers in Arizona, there's a place that even the Grand Canyon can't top. It's called Sedona. Many believe this is the site of a mysterious energy field where the Earth's cosmic power lines meet and create 4 energy vortices. One of them, they say, is centered here at Cathedral Rock.
There's some really interesting things about this location specifically, but there's actually a serpent that goes around the top of the mountain, and I'm not showing it here, but there's a head on one end of it. And the connection to Kundalini and to the awakening of the pineal gland, that's just been lost in our understanding of the world that we live in, with serpents and so forth being attributed to negative things. We've lost the positive meanings of symbolism in so many ways. It's seen like the Medical Association. I know the American Medical Association, and possibly the same in Britain. And you see the rod with the 2 snakes that are intertwining and meeting up at the top as a symbol of medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's Kundalini. That's an expression of something that's hidden from most people, because it pertains to this energy that we have resting at the base of our spine, that if we activate it, we can, the 2 serpents come up to the top of our head at our pineal gland, and then we have an opening up to higher dimensions, higher beings, or higher selves. And it's that kind of spiritual awakening that's they're trying to prevent. And probably compared to the number of people that used to have that happen, there's comparatively much less in our world today because of that suppression. Mm-hmm. But one thing I want to say about this whole area, I'm just on the other side of the mountain from here now, and on both sides, Sedona, little town Cottonwood, Clarkdale, and then where I am in Prescott now, the mud flood evidence is just everywhere. It's like the land is just, moved and buckled. And there's houses up high. Why would you build up there? There's ones that are low, you go downhill, there's this uphill, downhill going on all over the place. And again, the mud flood evidence that people see where the windows are disappearing as you go downhill, and there's archways that are bricked up and you only see the top of the arch. You've got that all over the place, especially here in Prescott. But in Sedona, it's like normal for us, so we don't really notice how uneven the land is. And until you start tuning into it, it's just a thing. It's just, okay, well, they must have built that way. But then you find these things all over the earth. And so, again, it looks like there was some kind of event, something that caused the surface of the earth to liquefy or buckle, or, I'm calling them land dunes. But most people don't notice it because it's just what it is. But it's all, I'm just saying, it's all over this place here. And it's been a process. I didn't see all this when I first moved here to this area. It's like, now I'm like, what the heck am I looking at?
Looks like a Minecraft game, doesn't it? This is like, wow, that back. It looks like some giant beaver's just gone over and nibbled on the tree or something. I don't know. Like, the scale of that, it's just immense. Mm-hmm. And that's where the power comes from. Why would you go to it as well? You know what I mean? Yeah. Maybe if it's on the screen, it makes more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, most people are living in places just sleepwalking. Let's just call it that. There's nothing out of the ordinary about the places they live, because everything has a reason, everything has an explanation, like the buildings, the old buildings and whatnot. But once you start tuning into, how'd they build that? I'm supposedly in a Wild West town, but there's these beautiful brick Greco-Roman buildings everywhere. And so it just doesn't match, but they promote the Wild West story, and that's what people see or think. And yeah, once you start really thinking about it, it just falls apart. This is in Sri Lanka, and this is called Adam's Peak, or Sri Pada. And it's a major pilgrimage site that looks like a tree stump, now that I'm seeing things that way.
Yeah.
Sri Lanka, and it's like so many places. I mean, this is like, if you've heard of the word Naga, Sri Lanka was known for the spiritual practitioners here.
Ah, yeah.
And this is another place where you can find the evidence of cataclysm in this part of the world, in India, and the sinking of places. And so there's a place between Sri Lanka and southern India called Adam's Bridge, or Rama's Bridge. And again, the story is, well, this sank a long time ago, but there's a railroad track going through that area, and you can see where the railroad ends on one side and the track begins at the northern end of Sri Lanka. So it's one of the places that I've identified as evidence that, again, the story doesn't really quite work. It's like something sunk and left, the end of the railroad track there.
Yeah.
And then you carry on through Sri Lanka or whatever, but the indication is it was connected to the mainland at one time.
When you mention the Nagas and the spiritual element, Michelle, I know we speak about it, but that essence we speak about energy. For the people of the past, it was one of the main reasons. Besides the healing and the aspects of respect, it was the veiling's thin there to the other world, the unseen God, like everything. So this is where as you say, the mystics visits. We forget about these elements a lot, these other elements, and that's where obviously CERN and technological things come in and all of that things. But there's a much deeper side to it that we don't even really speak about either, which is considered magic or death realm or unseen. I don't know how. Yeah.
Because isn't Adam's Peak as well the one where they allegedly say that that's where Buddha's footprint is or something? Because there's a footprint of a Buddha or a god or something like that. And if you look at that image of that footprint, it's a lot larger than a human of today. Basically, it's not like a size 10 or 11, footprint. It's slightly larger, which would suggest that it would have been on someone slightly taller than our current human species and stuff. So, it just goes to show, doesn't it? And obviously with the mystics on there, if it is Buddha like they say, obviously he would have gone to this area, for a specific reason and stuff.
Yeah, so this is a very special place. There's a place in the middle of Sri Lanka that's shaped like a lion. That might be another tree location, but it's Sigiriya or something like that. If you look that up, Chad, that's a special place. And then in the north of Sri Lanka, an event that occurred within the last couple of decades was the burning of the library at Jaffna. And somebody communicated to me when I did a video through this part of the world several years ago that there was a lot of just priceless information that just went up in flames about that aspect of who we are and our abilities to access those superpowers that we have. Some gang kind of burned down the library, but there's just another example of why that kind of thing was going on.
It's all ours, Montag. Listen to me, Montag. Once to each fireman, at least once in his career, he just itches to know what these books are all about. He just aches to know, isn't that so? Well, take my word for it, Montag. There's nothing there. The books have nothing to say. We must burn the books, Montag. All the books.
So it's controlling the data. Once you control the data and the knowledge, according to to the controllers, that's who's got control over humanity, basically, and that's what they've been trying to do. As a result of burning the libraries, getting rid of some of the physical evidence and information.
Isn't it ironic though that books come from like mostly
Trees.
paper, which is trees, and it's like this almost twisted representation of the trees were the first holders of knowledge. And what I was going to say about this is it's funny how they're covered. Do you know what I mean? What you were saying, Michelle, about our natural ability, our special powers, we can't see these anymore necessarily, normal people. They're hidden. And that's what's happened to us. We're all gifted in all our ways. Each person is beautiful. I believe it's in them. And it's the same as all these locations, and they've all been hidden. It's still there. It's just hidden. So, but it's been damaged to a degree, you could argue, but it's still there, so.
Yeah, there's, and the controllers gave us the internet to control us, but we're using it to wake up, so.
Yeah.
It's coming back. And then Uluru in Australia, and we'll come back to this location on Earth a little bit later on, but, again, now I can see it. Now I can see the tree stump, whereas I couldn't before. And, again, the idea that we're talking about stone as opposed to wood, and, a lot of things that seem contradictory kind of blind us to what we might actually be seeing. And this is a very sacred place. So Uluru is the third chakra on the earth, as well as being a nodal point. And so the earth has chakras, like we were talking about, the same way we do. And, just speaks to the interconnected of all of this, interconnectedness with everything.
It just goes to show, Michelle, the last few photos that you've shown, if you notice all the rocks, they appear to be of red, which is the iron content on rust. All those ones that you show, and these rocks or hills, mountains of the ironstone are literally everywhere around the world.
Right.
Because of the mineral content.
That's a very good point, and I think just another indicator, because I'm aware of other things like that. I mean, Sedona is filled with those, with red rock. Chad?
Don't be deceived by form. Water's got the three states. We look at ice, do we believe it can never be water or evaporate? Yeah. It's hard for us. I know it's hard. But once you can see, you can't unsee. That's all I can say. So keep watching.
I'm going back.
It'll come.
I'm going to Chad's and Michelle's giant trees theory on that as well. A lot of these locations have got their own supply of water. They've always got like springs or rivers or creeks running next to it, because that obviously water would have been used to feed the tree that was there, because obviously the tree wouldn't have been able to grow if it didn't have a supply of water. And all these places, obviously you can't necessarily see it, but some of them can be subterranean supply, like springs, which would have given that energy for that tree in order to grow and survive.
Right. It's a good point.
Even if it looks like it's in a desert, it's got some kind of subterranean water which would have sustained that tree.
It adds to that, mate, at one level. At some levels, it adds to it, because if it was to be tarnished, it would just suck that environment and change it from a flourished landscape to not necessarily what we see, because this is a result of a lot of stuff, but to a land of death, rather than flush. So I think it
Absolutely.
adds to what
Yeah,
you're saying. That's all.
it does. It's the same like
Yeah,
we
yeah,
see images of Egypt now, where you see like the desert and where Egypt was with the Great Pyramids. You see images now portrayed of where it was like green and fertile landscape.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
something must have happened, at some point, like Michelle says, with a cataclysm or, whatever it was.
And I've got some slides to cover that, but there's two things that came to mind when you were talking. And one is that Alice Springs is close to Uluru, which is also called Ayers Rock. And then the other thing is that where I live in Arizona, Sedona, and that whole area, there is so much water underground. And there's actually a lot of rainfall here, more than you would think. I mean, it's still kind of deserty. It's not as dry here as it is further south in Arizona, and it's not as hot as it is further south. But you look at the surface and, it looks very dry and very deserty, but there's artesian wells throughout this whole area. And I'm going to reference the area around Sedona and the Verde Valley because I know that the best. But that's exactly right. I mean, they call it the Sinagua, the Anasazi, and they left because they didn't have any water and all of that stuff, and that's like BS. I mean, that's just part of the narrative. It's like they built the mounds one basket full of dirt at a time because we're talking about natives in loincloths, and yet all of these mounds are like perfectly geometrically and astronomically aligned, in this big system. So, again, this random thing just it's kind of humorous because that's their basic story about those kinds of things. Okay, so I'm going to go into something a little different, and this is a shot that Adam sent me from a really nice collection of ley lines that he found in his searching. But I wanted to bring it up for a couple of reasons. And one is that you have 3 of the 12 nodal points that we were talking about all relatively close together. So you've got Delphi here, and Axum is here, and Göbekli Tepe is here. And the X's are just kind of showing where there's crossover between ley lines. And I'm going to show some more examples of this part of the world, just again, so you could just see that, just the absolute devastation of this region. That's kind of like what I was talking about, the hills all around, is like people just get used to it and, take it for granted, or things were always like this or whatever. And there's a whole region through here that is just covered in sand, among other things. And humans are adaptable, and we all probably had a mind wipe when this happened and had to be reprogrammed. And so you would think, well, what about the history of the people through here or whatever? What do they say? But I'm just saying that if you look at this region on Google Earth, it just looks totally devastated. And we'll be going into that more. But any thoughts, Adam, since this came from your repertoire?
No, I just agree with you. Those areas have, especially in the African parts and the Arabian parts, they're all kind of desert land on. And you can see any Google Earth image, you can see that massive devastation area where, in that part of Africa and Arabia, compared to anywhere else. So if you look at the alignment along the line across the rest of the world in that line, why is it just that focusing on that particular area where there's the majority of the devastation, and you don't get quite as much, a few thousand miles on the same latitude as you do in this particular area? So from my honest opinion, from what Michelle's work has been carried out, one of the main, how would you call it, detonators, if you like, for this cataclysm would have been located somewhere in either Africa or the Arabian area.
And we'll be
Without a shadow
definitely
of a
getting
doubt.
into that. That's coming up. I mean, this area is just so important, and it really it can get kind of sensitive in some areas because of what we might potentially be looking at and how they've covered the story up. But and part of that is I believe this could be the real Holy Land as opposed to what we've been told about the Palestine bought Israel. And then that gets into a whole another kettle of fish with people's belief systems and things like that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Stonehenge, and it's next to the River Avon, and you can see the S shapes here. It's called the Salisbury Avon. There's another part of the Avon that we're going to talk about up Adams Way, but this is around Stonehenge. And Adam, could you talk a little bit about the lady that contacted you after we had our last conversation about reversing the grid and our discussion about Aleister Crowley and his potential involvement in this? I've taken just a segment of the information that she sent you, that you sent us, to share, with the idea of just kind of showing you some things to our viewers. And we're collecting evidence to support the things that we're saying, but this is a good starting point, so we can at least show you what's around, what is said, and then some things about Stonehenge and what's here.
Yeah, so from one of the videos, I think it was a conversation that we had with Michelle, and I think it was the first video that us three had together. A lady contacted me from the US who used to work for the US military, and she said she might have some information for us three that'd be quite useful regarding the Earth grid and stuff. So she forwarded me a link of that, the link that I've sent you guys regarding Aleister Crowley. And the links on that, on everything, she seemed like a genuine person wanting to get the information out there, because the information that she said to me, I've either heard information previously from my own experiences, or they've come to light since. Because I can't remember if it was in that information that I sent you, but they did set, I think it was in that information that I sent you as well, that the Stonehenge, like a nodal points, a lot of these nodal points were placed where there was like a lot of crystal content into it, the mineral content directly under these places, because that crystal is an energy amplifier. So they built places like Stonehenge above these crystals, where there's large crystal contents of quartz, for example.
Right.
And then, because I remember, what was it, about over 20 years ago, I remember someone saying to me that they were planning to build at Stonehenge, for example, a road that goes underneath it for the traffic. And there was just recently last year that there was rumours that the government was either trying to approve for a new bypass to go directly under where Stonehenge is. Because if you look at the area around Stonehenge, as you can see on the image here, it's all pretty much kind of flat land, apart from a few hills and stuff. So it will be more expensive, if you think about it, to build a road under the ground for no purpose and trying to build a road around it to ease congestion. So one of the purposes is to deplete that energy source, to dig under it, to deplete some of that crystal energy that still could be potentially present at that particular location in order to control the grid.
Right.
And it's quite interesting as well with Crowley, because you mentioned the River Avon, because obviously that goes through to Warwick, where Warwick Castle is. And I've had numerous conversations with people in the past that have actually said to me that when they were a child, would have been in a pre-teen state, so probably anything from the age of about 6 to 12, that they've actually been taken by by one of these Masonic people in a boat on a river, just where Warwick Castle is, and they're actually taken into this underground, what they call, like, refer as a crystal palace, because of the crystal content on that. And that was probably around about 30 or 40, 40 years ago in the past. And I've heard that same story, from about 6 or 7 people. And the last time I heard that story was about 18 months ago from someone, of a lady that was actually taken down when she was a child. And she remembers going down there, seeing these quartz crystals in this place. And she found it really kind of spooky. So why would the same, people at the same age, when they were young, taken to this place in order for it to be seen?
And there's really a lot of pieces to the puzzle. I just wanted to share a little bit of the information that was sent to you by this lady. And this was after our talk about the destruction, exploitation, and reverse engineering of the Earth's grid system, and talked at length about Crowley and his potential involvement in all of this. And it may sound out there, but there is evidence to back this up, and not just coming from this source, but also other things that I've seen and heard and read about, and now things that I'm finding in my own research in Pennsylvania, New York, West Virginia, throughout that area. There's just a lot of weird, anomalous kind of stuff. And to really drill into this, there's a lot of information around this that sounds probably way too out there for too many people. So I want to share a section of what she sent, and I want to show you in the next slide the things that you find around Stonehenge, which is considerable. So before I go into this excerpt, okay, I just want to point out here, so you've got this shaped river here, the Avon. You have some other similar shapes like that in the landscape around here that look like maybe they're dried up or filled in or something like that. And then you've got the airport here. So this is one section. You've got Stonehenge here, and then you've got all kinds of things in the landscape that are considered ancient. Durrington walls, the Stonehenge cursus, and all of that. In proximity to Stonehenge, you have Bulford Camp, Larkhill Space Station. You've got a race course near here, which is something that I've identified as connected to the energy grid circuit board Earth concept. But first, a little blurb about Aleister Crowley. He was manipulated through his own massive ego of patriarchal superiority, greed, genetic elitism, egomaniacal selfishness, and sexual deviance to install a vast circulatory system of ley lines of control for these dark forces. And that this defined the structure of satanic forces, which I think people can relate to, which run the reversal energies in the black magic grids. So it seems like Crowley is being identified as a key figure in the reverse engineering of the Earth's grid system based on black magic and occult practices. And when I first started waking up to Crowley's role in this, and some books that I was reading by Peter Moon back around 2014, 2015, 2016, he was talking about those kinds of themes. That was when my awareness was first tuned into this. And at the time, it was before I started doing my own research or anything like that. And I was just kind of scared by it, because in one of his books, he said we were knocked off the positive timeline we were in. And by that time, I had gained an understanding about unity consciousness and ascension and all of that. And so I read that and I'm like, what? And then in several of his books, he's talking about this man known as the wickedest man on earth. And he really does seem to have played some role in this. And Adam's been doing a lot of research because he's like right next to his hometown. So he's got some great pieces of the puzzle. But for the purposes of this right now, I just wanted to say this location is just like a hot spot for something going on. And it said in this document that she sent you, Adam, the headquarter hub in Stonehenge acts as a final collection point by directing huge amounts of electromagnetic power through massive amounts of collected, or stolen in parentheses, life force from multiple subsidiaries all over the planetary globe. That's what it says. I'm just reading. And the planetary grid lines, as well as the planetary gates. This strategy is directly to inflict sexual misery, sexual abuse, and sexual slaves on this earth, starting as early and young as possible. And this was taken advantage by these entities to splinter soul energies rather than integrate and heal them by controlling the sexual energies. And there's multiple layers to this, and the mind control that's been artificially created to control, deceive, separate, confuse, torture, and steal human beings' sexual life force. And it is a violation against the human soul. The main collection center for sexual misery is called the NRG Network, that is a central hub in the UK. It is designed to create psychopaths and sexual predators based on this whole strategy by the negative beings and the controllers.
Here's the thing about feelings. They're so much easier to control than facts. Turns out in my matrix, the worse we treat you, the more we manipulate you, the more energy you produce. It's nuts.
We need this. Our city is counting on you to collect those children's screams. Without Scream, we have no power.
I've been setting productivity records every year since I took over. And the best part, zero resistance. People stay in their pods, happier than pigs in shit. The key to it all? You and her, quietly yearning for what you don't have while dreading losing what you do. For 99.9% of your race, that is the definition of reality. Desire and fear, baby.
And I just wanted to share that because, you know, there's a whole lot more we could say about who and what's behind this, but that's what we see playing out today. And where did that come from? It came from somewhere. This is not just who we are in our natural state. This is being manipulated and deliberately cultivated to have young people in this situation that we're seeing today all over the world. And that describes it perfectly. So I just wanted to share that. Okay, you know, whatever you think, you know, Stonehenge is some kind of main collection center according to this. But when you look at what's around Stonehenge, you know, there's just a lot of signs that there's a lot of activity there for something. And I know that there's like photographs of Stonehenge being built or worked on sometime in the 1950s. And I'll just state my personal belief that that is an ancient megalithic structure. It wasn't built in the 20th century. Maybe they were there doing work on it, and that's when the pictures were taken. But Stonehenge is one of those places I have been to. I know how big that place is. You drive up to it, and it's all you see on the horizon. You know, that wasn't built in the 1950s, but they certainly could have been tinkering with it and taking pictures of it, or trying to move things around or whatever. You know, the massive multi-ton stone blocks. So anyway, feel free to share.
To me, that all just relates to the MK series and things that I did. And this is how everything is important. You know, it took a lot out of me to go through all that dark stuff. And it was a little bit different from the trees. You know what I mean? Like, but it's all linked to this, and I knew it was, and it is. It's yeah. It's just so horrible, though, isn't it? You know, but that's what I mean. There's so many layers and levels to what you find in Michelle, what you're presenting, Adam, what I'm finding and trying to present. Sometimes it can get muddly, but it's everything.
You know, and again, I just want to make the point that this isn't as out there as it sounds, and there is backup. It just tends to be known only by a few people, like whoever this lady was that contacted Adam, that worked in the field of defense in the US, who knew about it and was agreeing with what we were saying in the last video about his involvement and about how, and we were looking at a reversal of the grids from a positive location in Cusco, Peru to Mecca. And, you know, that whole thing with how, you know, people are going around the cube in a certain direction, and where that energy might be going. You know, so that's kind of where we left off, and this is picking up from there. So it's something to consider with all the different explanations people are giving for what happened here and when it might have happened and how. And I mean, to me, the bottom line is, how in the heck did we get here so far from where we were and who we really are? Because it's not random. It's not our natural state. They want us to think we're naturally beasts and depraved and all this other stuff, but we're not. They have to abuse us to get us there and divide us and create fear of each other. And in this case that I was just referring to, confusion in young people about, I don't know if I'm in the right body or not, and being actively aided and abetted towards, sure, no problem, go ahead. We need to make that happen. Don't tell your parents. You know, how'd we get here? Adam, how about
It might be
you?
worth mentioning, Michelle, obviously, because it seems to be quite on a, you know, focusing on a negative aspect on it, which is important for people to be made aware of it. But it just proves the power of human consciousness, because you've got all the infrastructure, which is seen more as a physical aspect of it. And then you've got the human consciousness. So if we see as Aleister Crowley, one of the main culprits to the reverse engineering, he had a level of consciousness where he could actually connect with these other entities, basically, these satanical entities on it. So he had that connection to them, for example, that lower level of consciousness, the high consciousness, if you like, but not the high consciousness that we're aware of, but just to that level of where these negative entities and these controllers lie, and they're perceived, you know, malevolent gods and people. So if he had all that energy, you know, that consciousness and that connection to those sources to provide that negative, people with a higher consciousness have the ability to rise at a much higher level and go to the genuine creator and can reverse basically the effect of what some of these negative entities have actually done.
Right.
Which is why they're targeting human consciousness, because if everybody started coming together and all these wars starts are ending, especially in places like going through about Israel, for example, and Palestine, of all the wars going on, if they suddenly, you know, stopped and human consciousness rose, that could be in itself enough to reverse that engineering that they've done and put it back on the right track of higher consciousness and positivity to the benefit of the humanity as a whole.
They're not more powerful.
But we're more powerful.
We're
you know,
more powerful.
Human beings are more powerful than what they are, because if you're a spiritually awoken human being with a higher consciousness, you have an ability to connect to those higher sources than what they have, because they cannot access those higher sources to what the highly awakened people such as Buddha, you know, Buddha, for example, to this high consciousness, because they're not in that frequency to be able to access that information, which is why they fear humanity waking up.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
once
we
it
just
wakes
have to.
up, they've got no control basically, and they know it.
So it's just a really a point of remembering for everybody to remember and to know they're not more powerful. And there's a lot of people that know a lot of stuff, but there's still that fear about the controller's, appearance of power. And yeah, I mean, they've got a lot of tools in their tool chest and they're not afraid to use them. And and I'm talking about, reprisals if somebody speaks up or whatever. I mean, that's still happening, but it just takes a lot more people standing up. Maybe they can do something to one or two people, but if everybody stands up and realizes they have no authority, it's based on fraud and lies, then that's when they have fear and get scared and run. So we just kind of have to stand firm in our ground and just realize that they are not all powerful. And that's just a really important that's a really important point for the people that are awake, that are still afraid.
Yeah.
Because I believe it's all about perception.
Can I just say, guys, can I just say, like, the way I picture it, imagine it's a line and we've all got our time to come out. Now, Michelle, you stepped out first. And some people looked and said, I'm going to go. And they've walked out too. You stepped out. I've stepped out. The time soon for most, we're going to step out of this line. And there's a lot of people looking around and thinking this is not right now.
Right. A lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
In your country, in my country.
Because the way I see it, the only power that they've got, what perceived power that they've got, is the power that people give them. If they think they're almighty and all control of everything, then they're feeding that energy to give them that power, that false power. Once you realise they've got no control, we've got more authority over it, and take that power in as an individual person. It takes one person to stand up, and then other people standing up that can overthrow it. And we're approaching that time now with what's happening in the world, with some of these entities that are being announced, such as the Rothschilds, for example. He was announced, that his death was coming through. All these so-called leaders, they can no longer be sustained when these energies start rising back up again. And everybody has that, opportunity to do something about it. Not everybody has to do it, but if one person decides to do it, then that has that more of a collective effect for other people to do it, and then that will bring an end to all the crap and corruption that they've been trying to cause over the last 200 years or so.
Absolutely.
We've got the power within ourselves, and it's people remembering that and taking that power back for themselves. Obviously, in a high vibrational, in love frequency, and no fighting in the sense of physical fighting, but using that positive frequency in order to overturn all the crap that's been going on.
Yep. And we're going to make it happen. So I just want to show a comparison between the oldest earthworks site in North America, which is at Watson Break in Richwood, Louisiana. And you have the same, basically the same shape as what you see around Stonehenge. And you also have the S shapes of the rivers. And I just wanted to kind of get into, here's another view. So this is the River Avon and in England, and the Washita River in Louisiana. And so, Watson Break is right next to it in a very similar configuration as Stonehenge here. And this, in our narrative, goes back about 5,400 years or so between the two. So this is kind of getting into how this ancient infrastructure is directly connected to this modern, what we would consider more modern things. And I'm going to, in the interest of time, kind of skip through a few things here. I may come back depending on how much time we have left. But I wanted to point out that this is something that Aaron's work brought to my attention from Uncovering Hidden West Virginia. He sent me this screenshot of the area around Machu Picchu. And and when I saw the S shapes of the rivers going right by it, it just kind of was reinforcing this information coming in that these ancient sites are right next to these rivers, these S-shaped rivers. And there absolutely seems to be a function of the shape with the energy grid, electricity or something like that. And here's another example of the train right by the Urubamba River near Machu Picchu. And what I've been finding in my research lately is I've been finding these S-shaped river bends throughout Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and you can just keep adding to that list. And the railroads are gone. In some places they're still in existence, but in most places they're gone, and they're replaced by recreational trails, and call them rail trails. And that's not just in North America, that's in other parts of the world as well. So they've removed this infrastructure. So I just wanted to give those examples of how these ancient sites weren't just something the builders just decided to throw together a long time ago and then it lost its use. What is coming out in the research that I've been doing is that there was a direct connection between these ancient sites and the infrastructure of the energy grid. And just wanted to give that as an example. So this is a view that was shared by Adam in our last talk about this celestial equator and how there's this like basic line of deserts going through here, with Mecca being somewhere around here, and you've got the Sahara here. This area just looks devastated, and you see a lot of the same thing on the other side. So when you're going into South America, you've got the Atacama Desert in Chile and a lot of desert here along the coast. And then you've got, of course, deserts all over the earth, but that could be from devastation on other ley lines from the same event. So I wanted to share that, and I'm going to pass on that. I do want to talk a little bit about the Abu Dhabi Derbyshire ley line, because that was something that was a synchronicity between all three of us. Yeah. And I'm not remembering where it began, but Chad asked Adam to see if there was a link between Abu Dhabi and Derbyshire and Derby, and come to find out there was. And not only there was a link, it's extremely interesting that when you leave Abu Dhabi, you go up and immediately you come to the Euphrates River. And then as you go up the Euphrates River, you're right in the middle of the whole mess in Baghdad that happened in Kuwait in the 80s and 90s and 2000s and all of that stuff. It was like America went on into this whole area. And there's so many similarities, not only between this part of the world and all the others in terms of the S-shaped rivers and all of that. This tends to be very obscured and hard to find information on. And so I was just putting pins here because I was trying to find out what was here. But this is one area that is being hit hard even today. And Yemen and in this area through here, and the divide and conquer is present here, like in Kurdistan, and how that's been divided and who were the Kurds. I mean, I just really would love to know who we're talking about, because Kurdistan's been divided between like at least 3 countries. And I just want to bring a couple of places to your attention here. One is in Erbil, and I'm not sure if it's showing on the map, but it's not too far from here. It was one of the places that was bombed at the beginning of the year, and it's in Kurdistan. And I just want to share some pictures I pulled up before we talked. And this is a picture of Erbil, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, we're told. And so this part of the city is sitting on top of what looks very much like a tree stump. And it hasn't been, maybe it's been a month or two since this area was bombed. And what they typically do is they say, well, we got bombed, so we're going to go in and bomb them. And that strategy is just is like their MO, going back a long time for all these wars. Well, so and so got bombed, and so all of these countries are going to go in and with their pact, and they're going to go bomb them. Well, again, this is just another way of destroying areas that they want destroyed and people that they want destroyed. And another place on this alignment that I was just showing you, the Abu Dhabi Darby alignment, is Mount Sinjar. And this is where I'm getting into how these people were connected with these former giant tree locations. So when I was looking at Mount Sinjar, through the region, I saw Mount Sinjar and I thought, well, that looks like a potential giant tree stump. And that's not the best example of it, but it looks pretty much like it could be. I find another view. There's another view of it. And so I just wanted to look up Mount Sinjar and see what I could find out. And that was a location that the Yazidi people went to when they were being genocided by whatever forces were trying to kill them. And this has been going on for a while. There's something very significant about the Yazidi people because they've just been so persecuted by whatever regime or situation, whether they're radical Islamists or the governments or whatever. I mean, these people have really been hit very hard by all of this. But this is where they went for refuge when they were under attack. And they're all civilians. I mean, these aren't militants. So I thought that was interesting, that I went to look up Sinjar Mountain, which I thought was a giant tree location, and I found the Yazidis right away. I know a little bit about them. I don't know the whole story, but it's connected to the Hindus. They're even connected to the Hopi in North America. And then this is a location that's not far from that alignment in Iran, in the Alukapu Palace in I think it's Isfahan. And I just want to show how beautiful it is. You know, these aren't things that people are doing that are always at war with each other. I mean, this is connected directly to music with all the musical instruments that you see carved there. Okay, so anyway, I was following this alignment up, and this seems to be one of the places that the controllers are really, one of their main lines that they want to control and create a lot of discord. And then it goes up through Turkey and Göbekli Tepe and that whole area, and then goes into Romania, across the Black Sea into Romania, and then it's going up through Slovakia and Czechia and East Germany. And then as you get up towards the top, it goes like right through the International Court of Justice in The Hague. And this really, I would rather show you on Google Earth, but it'll take too much bandwidth for me to do that. So I'm going to do it this way. And then it crosses over into England, and all the buildings through here are just like gorgeous, gorgeous buildings. And then it goes on up into Ireland. The Abu Dhabi lay goes into Ireland right near the Hill of Tara and Newgrange. And I know, Chad, you were looking into Tara at one point. It was something you sent me a picture of.
It
So
might have
that's
been
where
something that looked like a tree or something, and I said, and I've not remembered the name. Yeah. What was it? Was it a
it
hill?
was something like that, the Hill of Tara, and that's where the kings of Ireland were crowned, or something along those lines. It's right next to Newgrange, and so this is the location of Newgrange, and there's a lot of ancient sites through here, Nouth, Douth, and Newgrange, and that's right next to another one of these S-shaped bends. And then you have the Battle of the Boyne right next to it. And that was a significant battle in the history of the British Isles. And so, you know, that's all kind of in a power site. So that's right next to it here. Derby was the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, among other things. And so there's just a lot of connections to the history of Earth today found along this ley line. And I need to do a deep dive into it at some point because there's so much here. And then I just wanted to show other connections. So you've got this train in Tibet that's also going by this river right next to it. And I'm seeing these connections all over the earth. And the rail history in China and Lhasa, and you know, it even goes close to Mount Everest. And then again, if you look at the area around Mount Kailash, which isn't called that anymore, which is the crown chakra of the earth, you see more for potential giant tree roots there. I mean, that really jumped out at me when I was looking at it.
Yeah.
The mountains and the ridges look like tree roots. So Mount Kailash is held sacred, and again is considered to be the crown chakra of the earth.
Giant tree.
Right? I was showing Uluru earlier, you know, talking about Alice Springs, all kinds of deserts through here, and then there's this train that starts in Darwin that goes very close to Uluru. You know, again, I just wanted to show this, you know, this continuing finding at this point now that I'm looking for it, of these proximity of these sites to so-called modern infrastructure, which I do not believe was built when we're told was built. And I just wanted to share, before it was called Pilot Mountain in North Carolina, it was called Mount Ararat. And again, this is a used to be picture of the train running next to the Ararat River. And it's a trailhead today. Get the same S shapes in the river bends. And we've talked about it before. This is Pilot Mountain today. You've got the sun rising here. It looks like it's going to be a solar alignment. And then Peter Champoux has identified Pilot Mountain as the hub of these ley lines. So again, speaking to the importance of these trees on the Earth's grid system. And that's more information I'm continuing to uncover in the research I'm doing, particularly right now, to show that it's just not isolated or random. And then Mount Airy is Andy Griffith's hometown. So it bills itself as Mayberry from the popular TV show of the 60s and 70s. So again, it kind of works its way into the public domain that way, even though nobody knows there's some kind of disclosure going on here. You know, and just, I could go on here, but I think I'm going to go ahead and stop because I know we could go on like for hours. Let me stop my share. I had more, but that covers a lot of ground.
Are we done? Yeah.
I'd like to do this again and then just kind of bring in some of the new stuff and just condense it more, so some more pieces of this can come out in terms of this pattern of what appears to be devastation of the Earth's surface along ley lines.
Just there, so I would like your observation. I can cut this out. When you was talking, I just thought I'd look about what a liver does. Because you know, in the river, if you flick the R, it turns like to liver. And I just thought if it relates, because it regulates toxins and different things throughout the body, doesn't it? And it would do the same for the Earth. I just, did you see any link? Do you know anything about livers much like that?
I don't, but Chad, just add that. That's a good point. I mean, we were tossing back and forth the tree energy and free energy thing, and that was spot on.
Because what I was thinking as well, when you're mentioning obviously about the River Avon in Stonehenge that goes to Warwick Castle, it's not just the ley lines that produce the energy, it's the rivers that carry the energy as well, because water is a conductor. So you've got a direct connection with Stonehenge and Warwick Castle through the River Avon.
I do have one more slide to go back to, and we can end with this, but it's a tie-in to the work that Adam has been doing around Warwick. And it's a good one to end on, because it's another piece that kind of speaks to what we're trying to show here. So you sent me this screenshot of work, if you want to talk about it. And I circled some things that caught my eye. And this is like Crowley's backyard. Yeah,
this is Crowley's backyard, because I mentioned in the previous video that Warwick Castle was reported and evidence of Aleister Crowley doing some of his ritualistic rituals, whatever he was doing, that negative aspect, based at Warwick Castle, which is just at the top end of the screen where it says, at the top middle where it says Mill Gardens. That's where Warwick Castle is. And the castle itself is located along the bend of the River Avon. And we've got the S shape of the river coming around here as well. Exactly the same as it is in Stonehenge.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned earlier, you know, I had numerous stories from various people over the last 20 years about actually going to, you know, to a crystal palace, which is what they referred it to, which is just a load of crystal directly under where the ley lines cross, the Templar Leys cross at this point by Warwick Castle. It's where this large crystal is. So you've got the energy of the river going from Stonehenge over to Warwick Castle, where these two crystals are under the ground, or these two large quantity of mineral content, which is an energy amplifier. So it's like Chad was saying with the liver, for example, you know, it controls the water going around the body to feed energy, to keep it alive. So it's not only just necessarily ley lines, which are the sole energy provider of the Earth grid. Rivers, for example, are a great source as well. And it's quite interesting with energy as well, because on this particular image here, on the bottom left-hand side, we've got the sewage treatment works. So that's processing the water coming through.
As if we've just said, and you've got that as well.
And then directly on the other side here, we've got the National Grid head office on the UK, and that is the corporation on the UK that handles all the energy infrastructure, such as your power stations, your power lines, and all that. And that's located in proximity where this crystal is of the energy, as well as where Aleister Crowley was doing his rituals. And why are they all located in this particular location and connecting to Stonehenge with the river as a direct source of connection? You know, both areas are virtually identical.
And then you've got all these schools around, and again, they repurposed original architecture into schools and hospitals and workhouses, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we've all been looking into.
And it's just
in our
worth
different
mentioning
places
as well, obviously where you've got the high school here, you've got the King's High School, because this image doesn't actually show it where the school's actually built, but there was an article in the local paper that in the field where the school is, when they start to build it, they've discovered a medieval historical village, which is one of the largest villas that they've found in the UK at this point where they built the school upon now. So they've rediscovered it and then just built that school on top of it. So it just shows about a destruction of the grid, you know, destroying that civilization that was living there, you know, covering it up and then building a school on top of it. So it's just another example.
And then you've got the race course over here, which is another circuit.
Absolutely. And you can't see just further north on here, you've got the Great Western Railway line connecting Birmingham to London.
Right.
And Warwick has two stations, one in the town, the one at Warwick Parkway, which is a commuter station. So you've got the same links here, as Michelle
I have
was
to
saying.
ask, is it beside the river?
It doesn't run alongside the river. Part of it actually does run alongside of the River Avon, where it's the Leamington side of the Great Western Railway. Part of it does actually run quite close to it. And there used to be an old railway line that used to run, that Michelle discovered, that used to run along the river.
Yeah. And most of them, unless they use it for some reason, most of them are gone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They don't want that infrastructure, and not only that, they replaced the former rail lines with roads, and then we're driving on it or we're walking on it, and they're harvesting our energy instead of the original grid system. And Chad recently put out a wonderful short called Circuit Board Earth, where in 2 minutes
I haven't actually put it out.
Yeah, well, maybe
Attach it.
Yeah, maybe stick it in here, because it shows how we're constantly radiating energy. They're harvesting our energy on these roads, in our cars, you know, when we pay tolls on toll roads that are connected to these giant tree roots. I know it wasn't when I was doing some exercise not too long ago. I guess about a year or so ago, I was going to a gym and using the workout equipment. And at the end of it, it would always say, "You burned enough energy to light X." Have you seen that?
It's great, isn't it? Oh man.
So they, you know, so they know we're energy beings, and you know, they're trying to get all of that because they don't have it in ways that we're unaware of or unconscious of. So, you know, more to come, but it's been a really interesting trip, and you guys have a trip in more ways than one. You know, you guys have really been instrumental in helping piece the bigger puzzle together.
What might be an idea as well, Michelle, because obviously mentioning about the giant tree locations and stuff, is if Chad is quite happy to, because I've done a lot of research regarding the location here. So if, you know, if Chad doesn't mind coming along and something, we can both go to that area and put our impressions on it, and then come back and discuss it with yourself as well from a location. So it's not just my perspective; it's from Chad's as well, and he can see exactly what's been going on at these locations. So it backs up what we've been saying basically.
I'm down for that, mate. I'm down for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's quite the amount of research I've done on it. It literally covers everything that we've been talking about in this video about the energy harvesting. It's literally one spot that covers everything, and we can go and say, look, there you go. There's the evidence in this one location to show about 90% of what we've just been talking about, basically.
I'm working with a Qigong guy as well who plays with energy, and he does similar things. And I feel there's a lot of people that would be willing to actually come along with us. And I had that idea about us all holding hands, and you've got a similar idea about the intention there. You know, if we could get 12 of us, I say.
And what would that do to the energy field and stuff like that? It's on a collective consciousness. So something like that would be a
lots to come, mate. Lots to come.
And I'd like to have another conversation maybe later on in the year to follow on this one, because by then I'll have all my ducks in a row with what I'm seeing in North America that ties into everything. Yeah. And again, it's not coming from left field. It just isn't. There's a plan that's been implemented by the controllers to a specific end, which is control of us and control of the creator and creation. And while they almost got away with it, it's so flimsy. Once you can see it, you can see right through it. And there's just a lot of anomalies. But not only that, there's the same kinds of stories. There's the workhouses that Chad connected to. He was born in a hospital that had been a workhouse before. And then he's looking into that, and he's finding, these were all workhouses too. And the same thing over here. And then they turn up being on the grid system. The Kirkbride facilities in the U.S., the insane asylums, and God knows what going on in those buildings. Haunted. If they're still standing, they have haunted tours going through them.
It's quite strange because here in Warwick, you got the hospital in Warwick, and that was built where the old it was still there, where they got the old workhouse. But what was the workhouse, the original building, is now converted into a children's part of the hospital. So that's where all the children are in that building, like where the paediatricians and everything are in that building that used to be the actual workhouse that you can still see on the old maps. It's absolutely crazy. And again, that's right next to the railway line, the Great Western Railway line, literally right on the doorstep of it.
Right. There's no accident that there's railways associated with all of these facilities. Workhouses and asylums, concentration camps. The image that you used, Chad, of the rail line going into Auschwitz. Yeah, it's not. They weren't just transporting people to their deaths in the concentration camp. There was more going on with the railroad as a carrier of energy or something.
Yeah. We've got a lot to come, guys. It just gets bigger and bigger, doesn't it? But at the same time, I need to thank you two, because I feel that, like, in terms of what you've done with Aleister Crowley, is really forthcoming. It's bringing a lot together as well. I feel like how I was trying to bring the MK stuff, the Aleister Crowley's the same but different in a sense. It's a different community and subject, really. So. But when you think about
it's still connected for that same agenda. It's just a different person, basically, and different parts of it, but it's still the same.
But that needed to be linked, because at the end of the day, if you want to look at it, look at the darkest magicians of all time, and who are they? Number one, probably that
Yeah.
of our time to say Aleister Crowley, and
Absolutely.
that's a huge. When you got, well, you know, like how Michelle, you're putting it in perspective the way you are. It's bringing huge links to a lot of people. I think that, yeah, as you say, I do with the tree. I feel that's like that's just there's something I wasn't looking at with Aleister Crowley.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
And let me just bring one point in. I probably am not going to address it until the video after the one I'm working on, because right now I'm working on piecing all of this about the energy grid together based on what I'm finding in Appalachia. But the cataclysm, I'll be developing more of these ideas about what caused it. But in our last video, I mentioned that supposedly, and this is in Wikipedia, Aleister Crowley his ashes were buried under a tree in Hampton, New Jersey. And Hampton is the junction of the Central Railway of New Jersey and the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad. It's a junction. So as I'm being pulled down another rabbit hole looking at that part of eastern Pennsylvania, I stumbled across the anthracite region. And that was the beginning of the coal boom in the United States. That's where the world's anthracite coal supply is, which is the highest rank of coal. It's like 90-95%. That was what got the whole ball rolling in the US in terms of getting the canals up and running, getting the railroads up and running. They were going for that coal and they just tore it up. But it's between Scranton and Wilkes-Barre in that region and a place called Jim Thorpe. It's in the Lehigh Valley. And this Central New Jersey Railroad that is in goes through Hampton is in Jim Thorpe. And the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad goes through Mount Pocono. Okay, so those two rail lines where he's supposedly buried under a tree, and I have my doubts about that. But that's symbolically what they tell us, is at the junction of these two railroads, and that leads right to the anthracite region, which was the big kickoff of all of this stuff in the United States around the early 1800s. And I'm going to develop that more. I've got quite a bit developed, but I'm still working on putting the pieces that I know I need to put in there to show this and make the case even stronger for what we're saying.
Because it's similar to this location here, not far from that's, you know, in Kyneton with the giant tree location. You've got the two junctions of the railroads, right where this giant tree was, and the military base, literally, and a battle of Edge Hill, all in that same facility. So it's
and then Chad,
so it backs literally what you're saying there. You know what you're mentioning there in the US. This is exactly the same in this location. So
and Chad, you beat all of us to it when you followed up on the research about the Malverns and what's there, and then you took it across the Atlantic, and you were looking in the same area that I'm looking at now.
Mm-hmm.
So you were on the same trail when you were looking at that. You know that these are the military is there; they have a huge interest in it. You know, there's so much more going on than we're aware of at these places on the grid that the controllers have hidden from us.
And guys, you're adding amazing parts to it. I thank you, and we need to do this again.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, I've definitely got some follow-on information that I'm not ready to present yet because I'm still working on it. But it will tie in the giant trees as nodal points on these ley lines, and coal mining and iron ore mining and all that other stuff is tied into it.
Absolutely.
They cut down all the trees, they got rid of everything, and then they got rid of the railroad, and we're not the wiser for what they're doing. And then they came in and they replanted trees, and you know, look how great we are. We want to conserve this. We don't want all the trees to be gone after they cut down all the old growth forests. And that was in the late mid to late 1800s, early 1900s. And then World War II comes around, or actually the Great Depression in the United States comes around, and FDR sends out his young people in the Civilian Conservation Corps to do all this stuff, and it's just a cover. It's just a cover for something else.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Guys, it's a great time to be alive.
It is.
And I
We
thank
can
you
make
for
the
your life.
changes, and you know, people like us are the ones to make the changes, and that's what we're here for. So, you know, let's do it, guys.
Definitely.
And Chad, I look forward to seeing you work your magic on this.
Thanks for your time, guys. Love and light to you, both of you. Take care.
Thanks, Chad. Love and light.
Thanks, Chad. Yeah, love and light to all.